Welcome back, or welcome to the Success Times Happiness podcast. I am Richard Thompson, and today we have an amazing guest. He is cycling royalty in Australia. It is Mat Hayman. He has had a professional career for over 20 years. He's been in 15 Grand Tours. He is the winner of the 2016 Paris-Roubaix classic race. And we have the ability and the opportunity to sit down with him, talk about all things cycling, but all things mindset and how he was able to develop that to win one of the biggest races. So I'm really looking forward to sitting down with Mat, talking about cycling, about life in general, and hopefully we can get some lessons out of that and that we can put into our own world. Mat Hayman, welcome to the show.
How are you?
Thank you so much for coming in.
No problem.
So to kick things off, I wanted to sort of, I guess, chronologically go back a little bit. You spent your entire almost adult life pursuing sporting excellence and spending a decade in with the Rabobank team.
Yep. And
then going to Sky in that, starting that process, and then eventually finding your home at Green Edge.
Yep.
When you started out, how did success look for you? Like, what was the goal of it? And I guess more on a personal level, I imagine that there's initially just essentially fighting to see whether you can get a world tour contract. But once you're there, what's driving Mat Hayman to turn up?
Yeah, I think, you start riding and for the enjoyment of it, or you get into the sport anyway. And then, it got quite serious. And then for a long time, that you wanted to turn professional. And that was a big thing while I was in Australia. Like, there weren't that many Australian riders turning professional and really striving for that professional contract. So that's probably the first big goal. And then when you get there, it's like starting all over again, and you're at the bottom of the heap, and all of a sudden you're in a pool of nothing but talented athletes. Everybody's there because they won races. And there's no professional rider that doesn't have talent. And then there was probably in those first few years as a professional, there was a big recalibration of my goals. I think leading into turning professional, thoughts of winning stages in Tour de France, and I was pretty cocky young rider, and that's why I knew I was going to turn pro. I'll go back and say I knew it was just a matter of time. I just said that's what I'm going to do.
Where did that self-confidence come from? Was it
it got knocked out of me when I turned pro, that's for sure.
Was it repetition of exposure to that as a kid, as in you were just that much better in development, so you only saw success? Or was it just this undeniable, like, blind faith that you'd be able to do that?
I think it was a combination of both. So there were people around you that saying, look, oh, you're pretty good at that. And, if you're getting medals at junior world championships and you're being selected, and, people are looking at your test results and saying, hey, you're not bad. And maybe it was better. I didn't know how big the world was and how many other athletes are out there that, you come from Canberra, and at the time, Michael Rogers, who's, 3 times world champion, stage winner of the Tour de France. We were the two 12-year-old kids riding around the bike paths of Canberra for many years. We were the only ones racing in our age division. We did a lot of stuff together. So to look back, that was the only real marker or litmus test, was a guy that went on to be world champion, and we end up in the same team later. So even having that wasn't a deterrent. One of the world's best was the only other guy I ever trained with through my late teens.
Because how old were you when you did get that junior time trial?
17, yeah.
Okay.
So
I would have thought the belief going into that would have been just as strong as it was going out.
Yeah, so that's look, way back then I was lucky enough to be involved with the ACT Academy of Sport. We had a coach there who went on to be a national coach. I was training quite hard and got a lot of contact because it was in the ACT. And, it's pretty much one city. It's not like a New South Wales or it wasn't, I could get a lot of contact, a lot of training advice. And the riders before me also for the Junior World Championships, both on track and road in cycling, we've been really, really successful at World Championships, more so than a lot of the traditional European countries. And I think it came, people might even say we were probably pushed too hard so young, training almost the same way that young professionals or an adult. Yeah, it was a toned down version of the program. I remember the Team's Pursuit riders were pretty much their next step after junior world titles was Olympic program. So they were guys missing going to year 11 and 12 to go to Mexico to do altitude training and doing 200k rides as 17-year-olds. So the level of our training was pretty high, and then was reconfirmed. I had some talent go to get a medal at a world championship, so that reconfirmed it. So I think in Europe the sports scene probably more like cricket and football in Australia, where it's just a rite of passage and everybody has a go. But we were definitely training at a scientific level, even as a 17-year-old, focusing on that event, a 3-4 month program to peak for that one event, where I think the Europeans would come in, have race last weekend in their town and just rock up. And it's, and seeing this success before me, it was normal. The 3 years before me, the Australian riders had become world champion.
Yeah, right.
So
you knew you're in the right environment.
Yeah, and that triggered then to get a ride at the Roubaix amateur team. And just still pretty. Yeah, everything could. I'd had my run of bad luck, but every time I stepped up to a new level, I was able to compete at least.
And then how did that change going from the amateur team at Roubaix to the professional team? You sort of mentioned that it got beaten out of you, that cockiness or that understanding that there are definitely levels of ability in a professional.
Yeah, there was no more guys, in the amateur ranks. There was a lot of really amateur riders, even some ex-professionals and guys doing it on the weekend where, myself and my team, the other guys in that development team were very, we were pretty professional with the way we were going about our trade, even as amateurs. Then you get into the professional ranks and, you're riding. All of a sudden, it's no longer riding and racing with 16, 17-year-olds. All of a sudden, you're sitting at the dinner table with a 35-year-old with 3 kids at home who's ridden the Tour de France 5 times. And it was a bit of a shock. Just the competency and the speed and the level of everybody. I do remember used to bump around a lot in the amateurs and everyone be fighting for every corner. And in the professionals, there was a bit don't come too close. But yet when the game was on, it'd be almost, there'd be more fighting than in the amateurs. So there was a real kind of, it's profession now, Don't be dangerous when there's no need to be dangerous, because we're all doing this for a job.
Yeah.
But when the chips are down and there's a result to be had, then it's game on.
Yeah.
So, it took a little bit, it was a bit like in the amateurs, you're never going to see that guy again. It doesn't matter if you ride him into the barricades. Who is he?
The peloton won't remember.
No, but as soon as you turn professional, these are your colleagues. You've got to work with them.
Next week.
Yep, next week, got to look this guy. And if you start roughing people up, then...
And you've been considered, I would imagine, what I can see from the outside is, someone who has always brought an element of integrity and I guess good nature to your riding and to the peloton. How much of that was that as a character trait, as a value of yours? How much of that was instilled early on, and how much did you go, actually, I need to develop that?
Yeah, I think some of it, I see it in my children. There's a real sense of black and white, what is right and what's wrong. And I see it in my eldest a lot. Rules are rules, and it's but
polarity of
it's sometimes hard to deal with. Sometimes life's not fair, and things aren't fair, and you try making everything fair and abide by all the rules.
I could imagine that's challenging for cycling because,
well, even the unwritten rules of the peloton, you just don't do that. I'd struggle with that. Like that.
But even outcome, right? So you're driven by success. The teams you might you spent majority of your time as a super domestique or as a helper to help the team objective, and so the team's success is whether or not you win a stage or whether or not you win that classic or whatever. Now, cycling is not. There's so much bad luck, or rather, you need so much good luck to the right position. You miss out if you're not in the right position at the right time. You miss out by a tire. And so there's that justice, or that inequity.
Yeah, I think you spend a lot of time. There's not just one winner of a bike race, and if there was, we often talk about in football there's one winner out of two sides you've got a 50% chance, and in cycling we don't win very often. So you do really need to take a lot of other positives, and individual riders can have success, and there can be on one stage there can be a number of successes. When I came, we were talking about the Giro d'Italia, which is on at the moment. Someone might get points in the King of the Mountains, someone might win the stage, someone might take time back on GC, another team might just have got exposure. So that can be 5 different teams that consider the stage a success. But only one of them went across the line first, So you really have to, and we have to also be careful that we don't find success everywhere. Now that I'm a director, it's easy to find something and say, oh, we did that really well. But you really can't, polish up a bad performance too much and just have to, call a spade at times. But I'll just go back to your other question. Yeah. I think, I do have a bit of a reputation too as a bike rider that so a lot of people see me as being pretty calm and pretty, but I have a bit of a fiery side, and I know a lot of my teammates would say he's fine as long as you don't push him too far across the line. So, which is also something comes back from childhood, a bit of a short fuse, and definitely around that what is right and what is wrong. Yeah, fairness.
And that's what you see in your children.
Yeah.
That's the short fuse?
For sure. Not so much the short fuse, but definitely the black and white of what fairness. Explain to me what the rule is, and then I'll follow the rule. But I don't want to see somebody else not follow the rule.
With that idea that in any particular stage you could have 5 different teams look at it as success, how much for you was the importance of integrity and those values you brought to the peloton? Sure, if someone's doing disservice, you're going to pull them up, or you're going to be fiery.
Yeah.
But how important was it for you to conduct yourself in a particular way, throughout your career, irrespective of whether or not you're one of those 5 teams?
Yeah, look, I think it probably was detrimental in my career many times because I was probably the first guy to say, that's what needs to be done, and I'll muck in and start with the hard work. What
do you mean it's to the detriment of your career?
Oh, I think there could have been times that I could have looked the other way, or not really taken on board the team goal and just done what was best for me. But I've been very much a team player, so I've always thought, okay, what's in the best interest of the team, and conducted myself in that way. There are times when you could just, not quite listen to the instructions or find a way or do something yourself. But almost to the point that I was maybe overcommitting in that area, not willing to risk to go deeper into a final and just get my job done and do some work and seem to be doing a good job and get out of there. And, something I talked about with Steve Peters when I was at Sky about, that maybe what I thought my strength was sometimes my weakness, that, I can work for other people, I can get the job done. But to take a risk and say, no, I'm going to be there over this next climb and I'm going to be there in the final and actually do a more important job, but there's a chance I won't make it. There's a chance I don't get over that climb and then I've done nothing, and that was hard for me. So I'd prefer to get in early and get a load of work done, but then maybe I was selling myself short.
So is it fair to say that as you matured into your career, you were more like, was that risk that you just talked about, the idea of putting yourself out there and for the chance of not getting anything?
Yeah.
Were you more, as you grew older and more experienced in the peloton, was that something that you freely came to you? You're like, okay, now I'm a stalwart here.
Yeah.
I know what I'm good at, but I do feel like I want to flex and try my potential a different way. Or was it the DSs coming to you saying, actually, this is what we need from you?
Yeah, I mean, I think moving teams from Rabobank, I'd really got into a groove of just, they were content with me, I was content with them. There was never any issue about, it was a very safe team. Yeah. But there was no real pushing my boundaries. And that's where Sky came in, and Sky was, great for me as a rider to reinvent myself. And
that was the allure for you. Because I would imagine that would have been a very challenging decision.
Yeah.
Because you've spent 10 years more in the one environment.
Yep.
Both parties are mutually happy.
Yep.
And Sky had just started.
Yeah. No, it was a bit of a risk, and that's out of my comfort zone.
For sure.
I'm somebody who doesn't play the risk card very often. I'm somebody who plays pretty straight down the line.
So was it something that was coming in from inside of you going?
Yeah, I think after 10 years on any one team, people will realise that sometimes you need a bit of a change. But I guess the big thing was when they were talking about bringing the science back and really
probably. That was you back in Canberra.
Exactly. Yeah. And it was a real full circle, and when you leave for Europe, you find that cycling is a real traditional sport. So, you rock up and things are just done the way they've always been done.
Yeah.
We've still got stories of, we know now, I think I was talking to you the other day at the pool about how important the nutrition is and the amount of carbohydrates that guys are able to consume now during races. When I first went to Europe, there were professional riders in France that would bring cordial to the race to add to their own bottles. Otherwise, they got water, So we're talking about a little bit of sugar in a bottle of, So even just the food that was given to us was just the cakes that had always been made at the local bakery.
Yeah.
And
it always has happened that way, so it always will happen.
Yeah, and you eat a steak and eat pasta and that's it. And nobody really pushed those. No one really questioned it. So, and I did feel like, that back in Canberra, I had access to more, to better data, to more scientific training methods. And then, so Sky really brought that back, and they were gonna look at almost reinvent the wheel, and we had to backtrack on a lot of things as well. There was you go and try and do something totally radical and then find out actually there was a reason that people did it the other way. There's hundreds of years of experience to say, well, that's how you do it.
But it's that process of...
Yeah, but it was everything was questioned, and you could go back and then you knew 100% that's why we're going to do it. But yeah, I also tell the story of at Sky that, just the fact that we believed that we were getting the best of everything. Mm-hmm. I knew we'd go to a race and we'd have a 1.5 litre bottle of water next to our seat on the way to the race, and it was called the hydration strategy. It was a bottle of water with some pineapple juice, but nobody called it a bottle of water with pineapple.
No, sure.
It was
the best hydration strategy.
The pre-race hydration strategy for Team Sky.
Yeah.
So, and you started to believe the hype, and that's about culture and building a high performance culture.
Yeah.
Where you believe that you've got the best, and you believe people are out there finding, and you're not questioning, you're not doing it yourself. You believe the team's got your back.
So then you move from Sky. What drove the move? I imagine that was a one contract agreement.
2, actually. I think I missed the first 2 years of Green Edge. When the Green Edge was starting, there was talks about moving across straight away.
Okay.
I think Simon Gerrans did.
Yep.
and we both went to Sky when Sky started. I just felt at the time that, I was really, reinventing myself as a rider. I was back in the front of races. I'd put a lot of effort in 1.5, 2 years by the time the contract had finished into developing this new team, being a part of it, being a leader in it. And then to go and join another new team and have to go through that whole process too of feeling out the staff, feeling out the other riders, finding the hierarchy, what is the culture. And I felt, I had the equipment, I had the support. But then that following 2 years, I do remember distinctly being in Paris-Roubaix, and I think Tom Boonen rode away, and we had 4 or 5 guys in the second group. And again, I jumped on the front to chase. And yeah, look, it was just like, okay, there's too many chefs in the kitchen, and
chefs.
Yeah. And it was like, okay, there's an opportunity at Green Edge. One, I've seen it here. They've had 2 years to get rid of the teething problems, and I'm actually ready to have a little bit less competition and be able to just focus on my own results and leading where I need to lead as a road captain and lead as a rider in some of the classics, and it was a good fit at that time.
Has there been a sense in your career about that juxtaposition of doing what's best for the team, but if that's at my expense, then my value as a rider isn't going to be as high as it could be, and therefore the risk of, like, if you stayed at Rabobank, does your future play out the way that it did? Or because of those decisions that you've made, that you're able to basically step up the responsibility to be team road captain, to be a leader in the classics?
Yeah, I needed a change. I don't think I would have grown any more at Rabobank.
Yeah.
I mean, the team went through a lot of change after I left. Look, road captain, and there was a lot of times that early on in my career that I had the option. And it was like, I can be one of the better domestiques, road captains, highly dependable. That's something that is in my character. That's what I like to be, and just put my efforts into that. Or I can gamble a bit and say and think, okay, I can win stages of Tour de France, and I'm going to just try and snake my way through and try. And I'd seen other young riders around my period who didn't do the job properly, didn't get the feedback that they were performing the team role, and they fell by the wayside. So I made a decision early on, and it got reevaluated when I went to Sky. It was probably the first time they really called me road captain and really gave it a name. At Rabobank, there was still a lot of older riders around when I was there, so it was more just a worker. And then eventually grew into that road captain role. And then, at Green Edge, it was mainly road captain, every now and again leader as well.
And I want to touch on Roubaix, obviously. And, but going into that Green Edge contract, or that stint, in your mind, what did success look for you? Are you looking at each year going, well, this year I want to achieve this, and this in my cycling?
Well, so the two reasons of joining the team were to ride the Tour de France. So that was one of the other big reasons. Just looking at Sky, I think maybe in my second year at Sky, I was on the long list. Pretty sure I was going to go. Was told all about team's time trial training and pre-camp before we went into the Tour. And then I had a crash in Tour of Switzerland. Probably broke a couple of ribs, but didn't really want to say anything because I knew it jeopardised my selection. So I was riding around Switzerland, kind of holding my stomach and coughing for most of a week. Didn't hear anything else, which was hard to take. Not even a phone call to say you're no longer on the list because you're a bit injured. And then, I think the following year just wasn't even in the picture. And I had that at Rabobank too. I was never really in the picture for the Tour de France. I was more of a domestique classics rider. And look, I'm now 15 years into my career. Felt like I had a certain level in the peloton, yet I hadn't ridden the Tour de France. So some of my talks with Matt White about moving across to Green Edge involved, what I could do at the Classics and riding the Tour de France.
Helping it to
Yeah. And in 2014, my first year on the team, I got that call up straight away. We started in England and, probably had one of the lowest experiences in my life. I didn't get to Paris in my first tour after 15 years of waiting. I think stage 9 or 10 just before the first rest day. Just totally empty and got dropped in the mountains. A pretty severe day. I think we finished on Plage de Belfise and
OTL'd.
Hey?
OTL'd.
Yeah, well, actually...
Or did you jump in the car?
I got off and it was a really, really hard day. The day before I knew I was in trouble and I thought I'd just get through this stage and I've got a rest day and you never know, you always have a bad day in a Grand Tour. And I was dropped straight away. And then even I think Alberto Contador crashed at one point and I think he broke his leg and he had a few teammates wait with him for ages until he restarted and then got put in an ambulance. And those guys even caught me and rode past me and I couldn't even hold on to them. And I'm getting time checks and saying, look, I think I was almost outside the time limit before I started. And it happened. Yeah, before I started the final climb, probably had 15K to go and I was already 25 or 30 behind. And it happened in a split second and I do regret it. The thought of riding up that hill and everybody waiting around for this guy so the race could finally be over and
You're by yourself?
Yeah. Possible. I had been for 4 hours, 5 hours. It was raining and cold. I had a team car with me. Just in a split second, the foot clicked out and before I knew it, I was sitting in the car and I did want to turn it back and I did regret getting off. I don't know what made me do it. But giving up, that was not something I did lightly, ever. I really felt like... And sometimes, again, not always the best attitude. There was probably plenty of times that I should have just gone home and recovered and I could have been better for it. But I always just felt like if I DNF a race, that it'll become easy. If you get into the habit of doing that, it'll just be able to get off anywhere.
Things aren't going your way.
I ended up out of the tour. And the moment I sat in the car, I regretted it. But I was also... Look, in reality, later I had some blood tests and I wasn't healthy, but at the time that doesn't play a part. All you know is you failed at your first attempt at the Tour de France. So.
Where were you mentally after that?
Yeah, really low. I'd moved to the team to do that. The Classics hadn't been great. They'd been okay. And then I'd, failed at the Tour. It took a long time. That's probably the hardest day I've had on a bike ever. Getting off at the Tour de France, I was a bit of a mess for a while. I can't actually remember how I bounced back from that one. There's so many over a 19-year career that there were so many times you had to bounce back from injury or disappointment. You end up becoming a bit of a goldfish where you just try to forget things as quickly as possible and move on.
Did you have a support group around you?
Yeah, look, I was talking the other night here locally to the mountain bike team and I think it's really important, even at a professional level in a professional team. And I say to the young riders now that you've got to build your own support network, whether that's your mum, your dad, your wife. At the time, for me, it was my wife and my family, coaches, physios, but you can't rely on a team to be all those things for you. There's individual sports where it's imperative to build that network because there's at the highest level, there's no one person can take all of that on. So you definitely need a support network. A lot of time with my wife and she's a pretty good listener.
And what year was that you pulled out?
14.
14.
Yeah.
So then you went back to the Tour.
Yeah, well, so 15, I wasn't at the Tour, but I did do the Vuelta. And it was one of the, when I look back on my career and I highlight, some of the best times I had. And it's funny because they always seem to be connected with wins. There's no times that I say, oh, geez, that was a great race that we just lost or we got battered, but I remember having fun with the boys.
Yeah.
No, every time I look back and go, oh, that was a really cool trip. We went to Quebec and Montreal, and we won both races with Simon Gerrans, and the race before we won with Daryl Impey, and we won everything. That was awesome. We were all on it, and we were pulling as a team, and it was a group effort. And the 2015 Volta was one of those. So we won stages there. We held the red jersey for a number of days with Esteban Chavez, and we had a young Caleb Ewan there who by his own admission was finished one day in the bunch and actually won the day. So he was dropped every day. He was struggling, but we had an uphill sprint one day, and he ripped it, and he won a stage, his first Grand Tour stage win. So we had a mixture of older riders and younger guys, and there was a real cohesion, and we were really just getting the job done, and everybody was just filling in gaps for each other, and it was, So that was 15, and that race at the end of the year, I think, along with several other events, contributed to the Roubaix win in the start of 16.
So for a bit of context, you going into 2016, obviously Roubaix. Why is it for you that Roubaix, even before 2016, you obviously have this affiliation with it?
Yeah.
I have my idea, my suspicions, but I want to know for you, why that race?
Probably first started at Rabobank and went to that race, and there's always a few of the bigger riders who don't, the riders that might be at Flanders who are not real keen on Roubaix. They see the danger and they don't think it's a race for them. So there was always a few extra spots. At Rabobank, I wasn't getting a start in Flanders where Michael Bogarts and Eric Deckers had come in, but then by the time we got to Roubaix, there was a few spots. So I raced it almost all my career, 17 times. And I remember the mechanics and the Swannies the first time we were at Roubaix, and they're like, "Oh, this race is going to suit you. You're going to be great here, and it's really up your alley." And I remember getting to the finish and just thinking, I don't know what they're talking about. This is ridiculous.
So for context of people who don't know, it's one of the biggest races in cycling each year.
Yeah.
From around Paris to Roubaix in France. What differentiates it is that it's flat.
Yep.
And it's also got a heap of cobblestone sections, which are notoriously very dangerous.
Yep.
Very difficult to ride, I imagine, but dangerous for crashing, punctures, bike.
It's a bit of chaos, really.
And so my thought was, going into talking to you about it, is that Roubaix, the cobblestone, scientifically, the bigger men suit. It suits.
Yeah, no, 100%.
You don't need to be 50 kilos.
No.
In fact, it's against you.
Yeah, the power to weight ratio, and just the way you kind of can handle the stones.
It's so unpredictable. So you need to be at the right place at the right time, and anything can happen.
Yeah.
You could be the best, you could be the odds-on favourite.
Yeah.
And that you may not even finish.
Yeah, it's such a hard one. So every few years it will throw up a podium of guys, or there'll be one or two guys on the podium, and you say, wow, he would never really podium in a monument. It's not a rider that you think of. But then you'll see their palmarès, their results, and go, well, actually, he's a pretty strong guy. Nobody kind of gets there without, before or after in their career, you'll work out, oh, actually, the guy's got some horsepower. So that's what kind of lures a lot of guys into, well, there is a chance where your Flanders or your Milan-San Remos, of these other big one-day races, there's less of a chance. It's a bit more scripted.
Mm-hmm.
And every now and again, it just says, well, if I have my day, who knows? So it just keeps everybody a little bit. But that being said, if you go and look back at Tom Boonen, who I beat, but he was going for his record fifth, his results in Roubaix are just phenomenal. So you talk about the chance of crashing, and he's consistent, top 10 all the time. So it isn't...
Same with Cancellara.
Yeah. So again, they might have one or two bad results, but ultimately they're always there. So it does also show that the cream does rise, and those guys are there, but it just leaves that door open just a little bit for anything to happen.
Where you're not going to find that in a, as you say, in a San Remo
or Flanders. We don't really find guys just popping,
unless you're pushing
on the podium.
8 watts a kilo up a hill.
Yeah.
You're not going to be in it.
No.
So.
Yeah. So.
And as a spectator, that's what Roubaix is awesome about as well. Is that it's like,
you're not sure what's going to happen. anything can happen. And you know, I've always used a quote after that, to always keep riding, was something I said after the race, and it actually comes from Mark Walters, who was my Belgian teammate at Roubaix. He wore the yellow jersey in the Tour de France, and he was passionate about Roubaix, and he never got to win it. He didn't even get on the podium. And I've, through my career across teams, whether it's been Luke Durbridge, Mitch Docker, whether it's Leon van Bon back at Rabobank, the guys at Sky, Ian Stannard and Fletcher, all these guys, that race was something special, and it really gets under your skin. And I can pick them out in the bunch. There's a bunch of Frenchies, and it's just like, this is the day. You know, I'm happy to work for anybody else for the rest of the year, but on this one day, I just want to go into battle and see how far I can go.
Always keep riding. How have you used that in life generally?
Yeah, it's probably one of my traits that's got me so far in the sport, and resilience and persistence. You know, I'm not the most talented bike rider. You know, I have a certain amount of talent, and that's how I got to professionals. But by working hard and bouncing back and just getting on with the job, I think resilience can get you a long way. And I think, you know, the story of my win is about that persistence and resilience.
So 2016 comes, obviously the Paris-Roubaix is on the list of races that you're going to do.
Yep.
You break your arm.
Yep.
About what, 8 weeks?
6 weeks, I think it was.
6 weeks, you break your arm.
Yeah, well, I mean, it wasn't a compound fracture or anything. No, it was in a cast. It was in a cast.
You're back home then on the trainer.
Yeah.
Going, well, I can ride. I just can't ride. I have to be stationary.
Yeah.
And so you're punching out sessions upon sessions
on the home
trainer with the view of still wanting to be part of that spring classic.
Yeah, and with the view of being able to just make that one race.
Was it truly?
That was enough. That's the last race that was on my program of the spring classics. And, you know, they'd said 6 weeks.
Because you're on a contract, right? So you don't need...
No, I don't.
You could just sit on the couch and go...
My advice for anybody else would be take a holiday.
You could have.
Yeah, I did get in touch with the team and said, hey, can I go to the Giro? You know, is that an option? I'm sitting here. I'm now 6 weeks out, and then after that, my next thing on my program was a break and a rebuild for the Tour de France. So I'm like, well, I've just trained all through Christmas and New Year in Australia with everybody else at barbecues, and I'm out doing 6-hour rides. I've then left the family for 3.5 weeks to go and do altitude in South Africa. I've come in, I've gone from race to race preparing for this, and now there's a hole, and next race will be June, and we're in March. And there really wasn't a spot in the Giro, and you know, we'll stick to your race program. So yeah, I would have got paid if I just taken it easy, waited for my arm to heal and
rebuild. Yeah,
but I don't know. I just felt like all the work I'd done, all that hard work to get there, and I was actually moving okay. I was really feeling good in that. It was one of the opening classics where I crashed.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't really know.
And power level, like your actual, what you're doing in training that year leading into the early 2016s, is that consistent with what you had been doing in 2015? There was no massive change in your ability for you to give you a change of mindset of going, I need to get to that race because I truly believe I can do something?
No. I mean, there were other years I'd got to that race where I thought I'm in really good shape and this is the year I'm going to get a result. In 2011, I was in a position to get a result. So I not only got to that race as the last classic, I got through a lot of the bike race, got myself into the right breakaway and put myself in a position to ride for a podium, and I made some mistakes. But, you know, I wasn't really thinking about that. And I don't know what I was thinking. And it oscillated between I'm an idiot for getting on the home trainer twice a day. I remember standing around the kitchen just drenched in sweat after a second session, drinking a beer. Just asking my wife, what am I doing? What am I doing?
It's 9:30 in the morning.
Yeah. Well, no, in the evenings. I was doing double sessions. So
yeah, I'm just joking.
Hour and a half in the morning, hour and a half. But yeah, you know, like I was just like, this is
a cast, mate. think.
It was. It was off after a couple of weeks.
Sure.
And that was actually a big disappointment because at the time I was started to get into knocking out these training sessions and I was pretty sure it wasn't too bad, the break in my arm and I got the cast off and when it fell, like, the first time I took my arm off the table without the cast on, I was like, oh, it is pretty sore. And while it was in the cast, I was like, I don't even know if it's even broken.
Yeah, sure.
And then it went into a brace and, got bad for a couple of weeks there and then started to heal up. And it wasn't until and I stayed on the home trainer probably a week longer than I would have in the past. I would have wanted to test it out and go for a ride on the road.
If there was any part of your body that you'd want to be sure for Roubaix is your arms, right?
Yeah.
The amount of shock that those cobblestones are putting through.
Yeah. So, that first time I did go out on the road, I just... I hit a few bumps and it was more aching from the endurance from being out and holding on, but it wasn't taking the shock and that's where that's when I finally went, well, maybe, it's not jarring. It gets sore and it's ache by the time I get to the evening, but it's not jarring from any movement, so, I've still had a couple of weeks maybe. I think I probably did 1.5, 2 weeks on the road. But I definitely stayed on the trainer just because the reports I was getting from my coach was, look, your fitness and as a rider, I mean, I was 37 years old. All I was doing was intensity and that was something that I would, as an athlete, that's the hard part of training, the intensity.
Yeah.
So I was probably needed that, I needed a bit of rest and I needed a bit of intensity and I'd had, I had 17 years of, experience behind me.
Yeah.
I had all that and the race knowledge and that intensity. It was just a bit of a perfect storm.
And then you get the call up, or you just make the squad, right? You have to.
Yeah, they didn't really want to take me.
Yeah.
I asked about doing a race a week before, and they said, "Oh, your bikes aren't even in Belgium; they're back in Italy." And eventually, I convinced them to let me go to Spain. Where they said, look, the roads will be good in Spain. And if you can ride this race the weekend before Roubaix, so that was about 5.5 weeks after the crash, if you can ride one of these races on the road, we'll consider you for Roubaix. I went there and did some really good numbers, tried to get in the breakaway, rode on the front. I think Michael Matthews won on the second day. And, that coincided with Flanders. And they said, all right, well, you can come and try the recon on Wednesday. So they still weren't sure, so they brought me to the recon and we went and rode a bunch of the cobbles on the Wednesday. I was sure, even in that ride, the guys had come from all the other racing. They were all pretty tired and pretty busted. They were all, it'd been a long season for them already and I was bursting out of my skin to get going. And I remember they were doing some riding behind the motorbikes to try and get some speed work in and I was just sitting off the back in the wind getting a really hard day in and I felt the legs were just really good.
Yeah.
But I still, I was just happy to be there. There was no ambition to win. In the other years I'd gone there with the ambition to get a result. And this year that was not on the cards.
I find that so interesting that after, that was your 15th attempt.
Yeah.
And it's probably the first time where so
I wasn't chasing it.
Yeah, you weren't.
I wasn't.
I'm just happy to be here.
Yeah.
And what'll be will be.
Yeah.
And your form's obviously very good.
Yeah.
Your mindset is, I'm just stoked to be part of this.
Yeah.
And we'll just see how.
Yeah, just everything. Like the bike I chose, the wheels I chose were just my normal bike. I was normally into the details of, I was the one that pumped my own tyres because I wanted them exactly the right pressure.
The right PSI.
And now I was just like, whatever, put them in, guys. I don't know. I haven't been around for a month or so, you guys. The wheels are a bit bigger, maybe a bit lower, a bit higher. I'd normally be going over the course or something. I remember watching a couple of movies with my roommate instead of really worrying about the race. So the whole lead-in was just a lot more, I wasn't building it up. I was just, okay, I'll get there. Even the team meeting was a bit like I'm carte blanche. I'll just, do whatever. I'll see. I'm old enough to know when, if I can feel the wheels are falling off and I've got no more legs, I'll jump in and try and help a teammate. Or if really just an open role that's really unknown value. Where other years it'd be, okay, you're going to try this or you're going to do that. So everything was just really relaxed on the way in. And I don't think I could have created that situation any other way. It was through those circumstances. You couldn't tell me another year, just relax.
Just relax. Yeah. Just watch a movie. Yeah, you'll be fine.
Don't worry about your bike, and because that's how I operated, and was the steps I was taking as I was trying to get a result.
But it was just that perfect recipe.
Yeah.
Of good form and relaxed,
Yeah.
forced relaxed nature of it all.
Yeah.
And then into the race, like at what point, did it at all change of going, actually, this could be mine if I want it?
Oh, very, very late.
So you were going with the flow
Yeah.
the entire time, maybe with only a few Ks to go.
Even in the final, probably thinking, oh, look, I don't want to finish fourth. I want to be on that podium.
Yes.
There's two guys are going to miss out here.
Yeah.
There were five. But yeah, at the start of the race, again, just cruising along, sun shining, meeting all the guys I hadn't seen for months. Oh, you're back, And then, it was kicking off, and I jumped into a breakaway. And again, just that serendipitous that happened. And I was in a breakaway of 20, 21 or 22 guys. We never got much. And the experience of 2011 where I really did push it and try. I just was like, oh, look, I'm out here. I don't know how my form is. Most likely I've missed some endurance. So even though I've got good legs now, they're bound to fall off. It's a 270K race.
Yeah.
I've been doing an hour and a half on a home trainer. That doesn't add up. So just cruise along. My teammate told me because he'd been jumping for that first 70 or 80K before the break went, he said, oh, I'm not feeling any good. I was like, all right, no worries. I'll just cruise along.
So you hadn't jumped at all?
I just jumped twice, I think.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. The guys, Durbo talks about it. He's just like, I was on the radio, I'll bring the car up. I'll give him my arm warmers and jacket. And then I just, boom, got in it. So I was fresh in that group.
Yeah.
But yeah, just thinking, okay, Jens or Durbo or Luke, they'll come across maybe later, and I'll be here. This gets me through Arenberg. There's one particular section that's really bad, often have crashes or punches. Thought, I'll get a free ride through there, be in front of the game, and when they come, I'll see how far I can go. And then finally, Durbo did come across with some of the favourites, and he caught me. Probably with about 80 or 90 kilometres to go. And he jumped in. He's, oh, how you going? I was, oh, yeah, I'm pretty good. And the next sector we went on to, I heard pss, 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 and then our race radio went, oh, I've got a flat. And there wasn't much I could do for him. So then I was, alone again. I was the only one from our team in the race. He'd only been with me for a few K. So had that not happened, I would have 100% committed to Luke. So now I was just like, all right, well, I'm the only one here. These are all the favourites, these big guys. They're all here to win. And yeah, there was one sector where I did feel like I can just sit here, or they were starting to move. Some of the really good riders were starting to move. And I did have a mental moment there that I said, oh, go now and just see. It's better to die trying than wait. And I moved then. Went across, and when we exited that sector, there was five of us left, and they were the five that went into the velodrome. Now, guys came back, and a lot of racing happened after that. But if I look back, that was
the critical point.
That was when I said, oh, actually, you're moving okay, and I started that mindset of go after it, take some
risk, because that's obviously somewhat against your character.
Yeah,
in the preceding decade.
Yeah.
Of
No, and there's something that I worked with Steve Peters about, who talks about taking risks. And taking risks doesn't mean just, going underneath somebody in a corner or doing something dangerous.
No, sure.
Taking risk is doing that thing that you always do, which gives you the result that you don't want, but you feel comfortable with. Taking risks is getting out of your comfort zone, doing that thing that if you sat down and for everybody it's different. For me it was overcommitting to teammates and not, backing myself in the final. So yeah, that was like, go after it, see if I can get across. What's the worst that can happen is I don't make it and I go back to the group I was in. No, I don't die wondering. So yeah, and again, the same thing kind of happened in the last 15K. We were down to the final 5 riders and Ian came underneath me in a corner and I got dropped from the front group. And that was again a moment that I just thought, this is what, this is my lot. This is what I deserve, this is
interesting.
Yeah, this is the standard for me. I had a crash before in the final a couple of times. I get close and,
that's the story.
Yeah, it's the story. That's my story. And I remember kind of getting going and think, well, I don't have to settle for that story. Again, I can go now and die trying or give up. And I just, pretty much left, right, just
see.
Let's see. Yeah. I've got nothing to lose. But
what was the gap at that point? 20 meters.
Probably a bit more, maybe 50 to 100 meters.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So I just
the 4.
Sepp had just attacked.
So yeah, so it was 3 and 1.
There was 3 and 1.
Yeah.
And I think I was totally out of the vision of the television, and I might have got a little bit of a run off the motorbike onto the back of him.
Sure.
But yeah, and that was, again, for me, we're talking about 10K to go now, not 50K to go. And that was like, well, if the legs haven't run out now, who knows? Now we're really, this is the last sector. And yeah, somewhere I started to really get into the flow of, these guys want it more than me. They all have to win. I'm the guy who's been in the breakaway all day. I'm the least one that they expect, and don't get fourth. That was pretty much what I want to get on that podium in that velodrome. The velodrome meant so much to me. That race meant so much, and I thought 2011 I made mistakes and I don't want to get fourth. It's not maybe the best mindset, but that being said, I mean, I went into the final kilometre with one other guy and I didn't commit to getting second, and that could have been, so somewhere deep down I was still going after the win because I could have easily just given him a couple of turns and he won, I go second, and yeah,
guaranteed second.
Yeah, I would have been guaranteed a podium. But at that point, yeah, we even, we both pokered with each other and everyone came back and it was a 5-up sprint. So somewhere deep down there was that and I think I've always had that when a road captain or now as a director, I ride for the win. I don't like losing. So yeah, even though there was that self-talk of don't get fourth, there was still something deep down going after the win.
Well, that's almost like your inner critic versus your inner fan, right? Your inner critic going, don't be shit, you've got this opportunity to get on the podium.
Yeah.
And your inner fan going, you're better than that.
Yeah.
You've got to be able to, and I think that's interesting, that dialogue of in the moment of of those last 10K. And you talk about the help or the inadvertent help from the moto. You've got to still make that decision to go back.
Yeah.
If you say this is just my lot.
Yeah.
This is the Mat Hayman story of all.
No, there was a definite.
You don't get that opportunity, right? That I guess I'm trying to extrapolate this to life, right? You're in it. You're in the arena and go, no, I'm playing here.
Yeah.
You open your opportunity to the motos of our life.
Yeah.
To maybe that helps 5 seconds to bridge. You still got to bridge 25.
Yeah.
But it helps 5.
100%.
And
got to put yourself in the game.
Yeah, and allow that that positivity or that opportunity to transpire. Because if you're not there,
no,
you're not getting any of it.
No, 100%. And all of those mini conversations that you're having with yourself, and I look back, that whole day was a culmination of my whole career. I mean, there's all aspects of working with a sports psych when I was 17 years old and working with a sports psych when I was at Sky. There's riding on a velodrome when I was a 12-year-old in Canberra. There's it's all experience and how you handle those experiences. Even the fact of why I was on a home trainer. How can you do that as a, because that was my identity at the time. Would have I done that as a 21-year-old? But yeah, so just being able to get over injuries, being able to use all those experiences, it's just the experience that you had to get to that point and have it all come together.
Talk me through the mindset in the final lap.
Yeah, well,
so you've gone with the favourite, with Tom Boonen, in the last couple of kilometres, swapping turns.
Yeah.
And then at some point you were like,
no,
I'm not working.
Yeah, I don't even know. Look, really, and I don't want to get too far into the sports psych of it, but no, it was a bit more of I was definitely in the flow there. It doesn't feel like me. I didn't race the last 10K, which is sometimes disappointing because it felt like somebody else. I was on autopilot, and that's the place that's what athletes call the flow.
Sure.
And that's the place you want to get, but it's a bit unrewarding because you don't feel like making the decisions.
Yeah.
I was riding how I would tell somebody else to ride, or how I know that you need to ride, or so yeah, I wasn't, which is a great thing. I wasn't making a lot of decisions. I was just doing.
Yeah. When
you're making a lot of decisions, you're not actually in the moment. You're not in the flow. So yeah, I did. I shook my head at Tom. I can't tell you why. I said no, and I don't know why I went up the bank. I don't know why I hit out. I don't know what gear I was in. And I went across the finish line, and I remember throwing my arms up. I've just won, the biggest race in my life, and something will go down in history. And first thought was I felt a bit self-conscious, like I hope nobody else is in front, or I just felt a bit out of body experience. So, yeah, it all came together for me on that day. And
you were overgeared, by the way.
Most probably.
No, that's, it's amazing. And I think the adage of, just keep riding.
Yeah.
I think is a beautiful lesson, not only obviously for that race and that experience for you, but just life in general.
Yeah. No, you can't give up. Oh, for sure you can sulk and you have your moments, but you can't give up. And I think, came back and rode the Tour de France after getting off in that same year, 2016. And just rode around just with that confidence, and I got to Paris in the same year. So for me, 2016 was a pretty big year as a bike rider, yeah.
And yeah, I mean, to cover off on your career, then are you going back to Roubaix wanting to emulate, or as a rider, or are you? How does the last couple of years of your career? Given that 2016 was so special, how did the success piece change, if at all, after that?
Yeah, so I was a bit worried because I did feel like a bit of an imposter in that group of winners. They're all the winners of Roubaix. I mean, I do have to mention the guy. I took away. He was going to be a record holder, five wins, and I beat him just on the line. And he was the first guy to come up to me and say, congratulations. He said, it's going to change your life. You've always been a good rider, an honest rider. That's great for you. And for have somebody of his level to be able to just look me in the eye, shake my hand and mean it. I mean, he was there too. He felt my attacks in the final, and it's easier for him to accept being beaten when you're there. I know that people in his community and his team felt a bit robbed maybe. So, but yeah, I felt like an imposter in that world of winners, and then, I was worried about going to the next race. Like, I knew damn well I was going to get dropped in the next race, and people are going to go and the camera's going to be on me in 4 days' time when I'm getting dropped. Yep.
It's hard to lug that.
Yeah,
that trophy.
That trophy is pretty heavy.
Yeah.
But at the same time, pretty quickly embraced it. And it was, I remember in the Tour de France, actually, we were in a mountain stage, and we were going up the mountain, and a group of us were going off the back, and I could hear the motorbikes beside us, and they've got the race radio on, and it came across the race radio, and they said, à lâcher de groupe derrière de peloton, and groupe de Hayman. So now it was my group, so I'm the Roubaix winner.
Yeah.
And I felt like, no, actually, if I was a 17 or an 18 or maybe a 22-year-old and it was my first Tour de France.
Damn straight, that's my group.
Yeah, and it'd be like, oh, I got dropped with Hayman on that climb, I kind of formed whatever group that was, the Gruppetto or whatever. But, so, yeah, I got over that imposter feeling pretty quick and rode with confidence, I am a Roubaix winner, and that's when a Roubaix winner gets dropped.
Yeah,
that's can be. And if it inspires a young guy to be able to say, well, he was never much better than me, that so be it, So yeah, the last few years of my career, I really enjoyed. I was, I wasn't chasing anything anymore. Not that I felt, even without that win, I would have been, I would have done it all again without the win for sure. That's not really why I was in the sport. It wasn't something that was missing.
From you as a person?
No, I don't think it changes much. It's nice and it's really not, that race got under my skin. I'd still love it if I won it or didn't win it. And it's a really nice race to be associated with. But yeah, at the end of the day, you come home and nobody in my house really cares that I won Roubaix, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, fair enough. All right, we'll wrap it up. I guess one last thing that I'd like to talk about is about you as a dad. You got 3 kids.
Yep.
What are you wanting to instill in them? Because they will, I imagine, they'll have only very fond memory. I mean, they'll have very little memory of dad racing.
Yeah.
There'll be a lot of YouTube clips, which I'm sure you got plastered all over the world.
Well, yeah, my eldest knows a little bit. He was actually there in the velodrome. But the younger 2, I've got twins that are 6 and an older boy who's 12. And the younger 2, they don't even really know what. They do know, but and the youngest boy, he's madly on Zwift in the last few weeks, even just as a 6-year-old.
Solid.
Yeah, I think just and it's been something that's come through, my family, my older brother, my younger brother, just hard work. Hard work trumps most things. And to be able to find something that they're passionate about, it doesn't feel like work if you enjoy it. And I think that's what any parent would want. What would you wish for your children? That they're happy, they get up in the morning motivated to do something. I think what that is doesn't really matter.
Beautiful. All right. Number 1 tip for someone searching for success.
Yeah, go back to that one. Hard work. Hard work trumps most things. Sure, in my field, you need a bit of talent. But yeah, persistence and hard work.
Okay. Same question about searching for happiness.
Don't hide it, it's all around. And if you're not, you really got to, don't search too far. I think, in the little things, be in the moment. My wife's really good at that. She's not materialistic. She can just be happy with a sunrise, be happy with a walk on the beach, it doesn't have to be somewhere fancy or somewhere, so yeah, just the ability to find that happiness close by. Don't put it in an expensive car that you have to work hours for, I guess that's probably.
Sure. Must read book.
I brought this one along. I haven't finished it yet. This one, Legacy by James Kerr, which is about the All Blacks.
Oh, I've heard about this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, it's got the pillars of a good team and actually the owner of our team of Green Edge, Jerry Ryan, who I can't speak highly enough of. He's a businessman from Melbourne. He's started Jayco Caravans, along with he's supported a number of cycling teams, football teams, basketball teams, and he's a entrepreneur, philanthropist, and just an amazing man. And he gave everybody this book in January. And he's invested a lot in this team, and he's always talked to us about people and culture. He's talked about, you get the right people and you build the right culture and you'll be successful. So when he gave us this book and how the All Blacks go about their business, and there's a lot of good takeaways for building good culture. And now that I'm a director on the team, it's part of the job is doing the race tactics, but also just trying to steer the ship when you can.
Awesome. Most inspirational person in your life?
This is a hard one. I don't really have. I really tried to take different aspects of athletes I was around as far as my professional life went. But yeah, I think I looked up to my older brother a lot. I think the way he never turned professional, but he was meticulous and went into a lot of detail around, and just loves bikes, He would work on his bike, clean his bike. I never had the patience all the time. He'd do my bike as well. And in some ways he lived his career through me. He didn't quite make it, but for sure he was more passionate and worked harder than I did. So it was good having someone there leading the way for me that was just that much more professional.
Setting the standard.
So
probably at the right time for you.
Yeah.
Awesome. And finally, one guest, famous or not, you would like to see in the interview?
Yeah, I was thinking about this one, and I don't know if it down the sports line, but in recent times it's come to head in the cycling world. Adam Hansen. I'm not sure if you've heard of Adam Hansen. I just think you wouldn't be able to fill Adam's story in one or two podcasts or three or four. He's got so many different hats and just an amazing entrepreneur, computer programmer, professional athlete, been mountain biker, businessman. Now he's heading up the cycling union. Has different ways of looking at things, is often before his time. And I think he's definitely not, I'm not that style, but to sit down and the few chances I've had to speak to him, willing to look at anything from a different direction. And I don't know how he doesn't sleep. That's what I've heard. So he gets by on, even in a grand tour. I mean, he's got the record for riding back-to-back grand tours. But even that, he set it up as a part of his life. He said, well, all I do is 3 grand tours a year, which is 21 days of racing in each tour. It reduces my travel days because I'm only doing like 4 races a year where everybody else does, 40. But just, that's the way he processes things. He's just, amazing kind of guy. So I think there's just so many different, whether he works with carbon fiber because he wanted to make his own shoes. He's a computer programmer. He's everything. He knows heaps about nutrition. He was ahead of his time in nutrition as well. Yeah, just to tap into that mindset. Yeah. Awesome. All right, we'll put it on the list. Mat Hayman, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. Good luck with the DS role and over the Tour de France. Thank you very much. And also in your new role and as capacity as the Australian head coach. Thank you. For the Olympics. Yep. Cheers. Cheers, mate. No worries. And that was Mat Hayman. I'm so privileged to be able to sit down with him for that long and talk about his life and the lessons that he was able to take away. The biggest one, obviously, is keep on riding. And I think life can throw you however many curveballs that it wants to. And it's our ability to stay the course and stay on the bike, essentially, to see what is possible and see what success can ensue. Because if we're not on the bike, if we're not getting back onto it and getting back to what we are good at, then we won't know what our true potential looks like. So thank you very much for listening. Any questions, please drop it down in comments, direct message me, just make some noise. I encourage everyone to share this podcast to the people that you think would get some value from it, and hopefully you did as well. So until next time.